My name is Daniel Whitmore, and for 2 years, I lived a lie to help a woman build the career she deserved. Her name was Claire Bennett, and on the day she found out I had lied to her too, she decided the only way to survive was to destroy me. I want you to picture a boardroom on the 14th floor of a glass office tower, the kind of room where careers are made and unmade in under an hour. Claire sat across from me, her hands steady, her face unreadable. She slid a folder across the polished table, and inside that folder was proof that our marriage, the one every coworker believed in, the one that had gotten her hired, promoted, and trusted, had never been real at all. I did not know, in that moment, whether she hated me or was trying to save me. This is a true story of loyalty, deception, and betrayal, and by the end of it, you will understand exactly how one small lie, told with good intentions, turned into a 2-year war fought quietly inside the walls of a company that neither of us truly controlled. You will understand who lied first, who lied longest, and who ultimately paid the price. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever told a lie to help someone you cared about, only to watch that lie grow into something you could no longer manage? If you have, you already know how this story begins to feel long before it starts to hurt. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. There are two people at the center of this story, and I want you to hold both of them in your mind as this unfolds, because neither of us was entirely innocent, and neither of us was entirely guilty. I was an ordinary employee, nothing remarkable about me on paper, a man who showed up on time, did his work, and went home to an apartment that felt a little too quiet most nights. Claire was different. She was sharper than almost everyone in that building, more capable than half the people who outranked her, and yet she kept getting passed over for the role she had earned. I watched it happen more than once before I understood why it kept happening to her specifically, and not to people with far less to offer. There is a question sitting underneath everything I am about to tell you, and I want you to keep it in the back of your mind as we move forward. Why would a man agree to pretend to be a stranger's husband, in front of executives, in front of coworkers, in front of an entire company, just to help her get a job she was already qualified for? And once you understand that answer, a second question will follow it almost immediately. What did Claire actually discover, 2 years later, that made her believe the only way to protect herself was to have me removed from that same company entirely? I promise you, the answer is not what it appears to be on the surface, and the ending will change how you see both of us completely. What you need to understand first is how ordinary the beginning of this actually was. Claire and I were coworkers before we were anything else, two people who ended up on the same floor, in the same department, taking the same short breaks by the same window that overlooked a parking lot neither of us particularly liked looking at. We were not close friends in the beginning. We were simply two people who happened to talk more than most coworkers do, the kind of conversations that start over coffee and slowly turn into something closer to trust. I did not know, in those early months, that trust between us would eventually be tested in a courtroom-style hearing inside our own company, with both of our careers sitting on the table. Claire had been with the company almost 3 years by the time I really got to know her, and in that time, she had trained 2 managers who were later promoted above her. She never complained about it out loud, not in the beginning. She simply worked harder, stayed later, and told herself that recognition would eventually catch up to her effort. I remember one afternoon when she mentioned, almost as a passing comment, that a director had once told her she needed to seem more settled before the company would trust her with bigger responsibilities. She laughed when she said it, but I could tell it had stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. I did not think much of it at the time. I had no idea that comment would change both of our lives within a matter of weeks. A position opened up that fall, a role Claire was more than qualified for, one she had essentially already been doing without the title or the salary attached to it. The interview process for this particular role was unusual. It included a dinner with senior executives, a chance for the leadership team to see candidates outside of a formal office setting, to judge how they carried themselves, how they spoke about their lives, their stability, their priorities. Claire told me, almost jokingly, that she had heard the panel favored candidates who appeared grounded, married, settled, the kind of people leadership assumed would stay loyal to the company for years. She was single at the time, and she said it as a joke, but I could see the worry underneath it. I offered to help before I had fully thought through what that meant. It started as something almost absurd, a suggestion made half in humor during a coffee break, the kind of idea that should have ended the moment we both laughed about it and moved on. I told her I could come to the dinner as her husband, just for one night, just to remove that one unspoken obstacle standing between her and a job she had already earned through years of work nobody had properly credited her for. She hesitated at first. She told me it was too much to ask, that it was not fair to put me in that position for her benefit. I told her it was one dinner, a few hours, nothing that would ever matter beyond that single evening. We rehearsed everything in the days leading up to that dinner, the way two people might rehearse for a play neither of them had auditioned for. We invented an anniversary date. We agreed on where we supposedly met. We practiced small details, the kind of things a real married couple would know without thinking, inside jokes, nicknames, the story of a proposal that had never actually happened. I remember sitting in my car outside her apartment the night before, running through the details one more time, both of us half laughing at how ridiculous it all sounded out loud. Neither of us said what we were both quietly thinking, that this was a strange thing to be doing for someone who was still, technically, just a coworker. The dinner went better than either of us expected. Claire was brilliant that night, confident, articulate, exactly the kind of candidate any company should have wanted regardless of her marital status. I played my part quietly, answering the occasional question directed at me, letting her carry the conversation the way she deserved to. By the end of the evening, one of the executives shook my hand and told me I was lucky to have a wife like her. I remember smiling and saying something forgettable in response, not realizing that sentence would follow both of us for the next 2 years of our lives. She got the job 3 days later. I remember how she called to tell me, how genuinely happy she sounded, how she thanked me for something I told her was nothing, a favor between friends, already forgotten. I believed that at the time. I truly believed the dinner had been the end of it, one evening, one small performance, nothing that would ever need to be repeated. I had no idea that a single dinner was about to become the foundation of a lie that neither of us would know how to end, a lie that would follow us through promotions, through company events, through 2 years of a life neither of us had actually chosen to build together. The first sign that this was not going to end quietly came about 2 weeks after Claire started her new role. An executive assistant sent a calendar invitation addressed to both of us, a holiday mixer for senior staff and their spouses. Claire called me that evening, half apologetic, half nervous, asking whether I could attend just one more event. I told her yes before I had time to think about what saying yes again actually meant. I told myself it was still a small favor, a single evening, the kind of thing a decent person does for a friend who had finally gotten the recognition she deserved. I did not yet understand that every time I said yes, the story we had built together became a little harder to walk away from. By the third event, something had shifted, though neither of us said it out loud. People at the company no longer thought of us as co-workers who happened to know each other. They thought of us as a married couple, a fixture, the kind of pairing people mention in passing conversation without a second thought. Claire's manager once asked me how long we had been together, and I answered without hesitating, the fake anniversary date rolling off my tongue as easily as my own birthday. I remember driving home that night feeling strange, not guilty exactly, but aware that the story had grown roots neither of us had planted on purpose. Claire and I rarely spoke about what we were doing directly. It became easier to treat it as something unspoken, something we both simply maintained without examining too closely. She would text me before company gatherings with small updates, reminders of new details we needed to keep straight, a coworker who had asked about our wedding, a rumor about where we supposedly lived. I kept a note on my phone, an actual written list of facts about a marriage that had never happened, dates and names and small anecdotes, because forgetting even one detail felt like it could unravel everything Claire had worked so hard to build. Somewhere during the second year, I noticed something changing in myself that I had not expected. What had started as a favor between coworkers had slowly become something closer to attachment, though I could not have named it clearly at the time. I found myself looking forward to the events we attended together, not because of the performance, but because of the moments before and after it, the car rides where Claire would finally relax and speak like herself again, no longer performing for anyone. She never seemed to notice the shift in me, or if she did, she never mentioned it. Claire remained focused, ambitious, treating the arrangement the way she treated everything else in her career, as a tool that served a clear and specific purpose. There was a night, close to the 2-year mark, when a coworker nearly caught us in a mistake that could have ended everything on the spot. Someone asked Claire where we had spent our anniversary that year, a date I had accidentally given a different answer to only minutes earlier at the same event. Claire recovered quickly, laughing it off as a joke about my terrible memory, but I saw something flicker across her face afterward, a kind of exhaustion neither of us had allowed ourselves to feel out loud. It was the first time either of us acknowledged, even silently, that the story we had built was becoming harder to control than either of us had expected when it started as a single dinner. Then came the email. I was not supposed to see it, and if I am honest, I still do not fully understand why it ended up in a folder I had access to that day. It was a thread between Claire and a director from another department, dated months earlier, filled with references to my old performance reviews, timelines, and notes about an upcoming restructuring that had not yet been announced to the rest of the company. I read it twice before I understood what I was actually looking at, and by the time I finished, I knew the version of Claire I believed I understood was not the whole truth at all. I did not confront Claire right away. I sat with that email for 3 full days, reading it again each night, trying to convince myself I had misunderstood something, that there was a version of this that did not end with her using my own history against me. The thread showed a pattern I could not ignore. Months of small exchanges between Claire and a director named Patricia Hale, references to my attendance record, my early performance reviews, even a comment about how replaceable my position would be if the department needed to cut costs during the coming restructuring. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Why would the person I had helped, the person I had lied for, be quietly building a file against me the entire time? I started paying closer attention after that, though I tried not to let it show. I began saving my own emails, screenshots of scheduling conflicts, records of projects I had completed on time and under budget, the kind of quiet documentation a person keeps when they suspect they might need to defend themselves later. I did not tell Claire what I had found. Part of me still hoped there was an explanation that made sense, some context I was missing that would make this feel less like betrayal and more like something I simply did not understand yet. I told myself I owed her that much, after everything we had built together, even if what we had built was never entirely true to begin with. The restructuring was announced 2 weeks later, exactly as the email thread had predicted. Department heads were told that only one position between 2 overlapping roles would survive the transition, and my role sat directly across from a position Claire had been quietly expanding for months. I remember sitting in that all-staff meeting, watching Claire across the room, wondering whether she already knew which one of us was supposed to walk away. She did not look at me once during that entire meeting, and I remember thinking that was its own kind of answer. A week after the announcement, I was called into a small conference room by someone from Human Resources. I sat down expecting a routine conversation about the transition, but instead I was told a formal complaint had been filed against me, accusing me of misrepresenting personal information to the company, specifically the claim that Claire and I were married. I remember the exact moment my stomach dropped, not because I was surprised the lie had surfaced, but because of whose name was listed as the person who had filed it. I asked, as calmly as I could manage, who had brought the complaint forward. The woman across the table hesitated before she answered, and when she finally said Claire's name, something inside me went completely still. I spent that entire evening replaying every version of Claire I thought I knew, trying to decide which one of them, if any, had ever been real. Had she planned this from the very beginning, using the fake marriage to secure her position and then discarding the one person who could expose her once he became inconvenient? Or was there something else happening, some pressure I could not see? Some reason a woman who had once thanked me with tears in her eyes would now be the one holding the door open on my way out. I did not have an answer yet, but I knew one thing clearly. The 2 years I thought I understood were about to be explained to me in a version I had never been prepared for. Claire asked to see me the evening after I learned she had filed the complaint. I almost said no. Part of me wanted nothing more to do with her, wanted to let the process play out and walk away without ever hearing whatever explanation she thought might make this easier to accept. But 2 years is a long time to build something with someone, even something built on a lie, and I found myself agreeing to meet her at a small diner near the office, the same one we used to stop at after late nights preparing for events neither of us had wanted to attend in the first place. She looked different that night, tired in a way I had not seen before, the kind of tired that comes from carrying something alone for far too long. She told me the restructuring decision had already been made before the official announcement, and that Patricia Hale, the director who had been in contact with her for months, had made it clear that only one of us would survive the transition. Claire said Patricia had approached her first, not the other way around, offering her a choice that was never really a choice at all. Support the case against me using the fake marriage as leverage, or lose her own position entirely, with no severance and no reference for the 3 years of work she had already given the company. I sat there listening, trying to decide whether I believed her, wanting to believe her more than I wanted to admit out loud. Claire said she had spent weeks trying to find another way out, quietly searching for an internal transfer, another department, any option that did not require sacrificing me to save herself. She said the file Patricia asked her to help build was never her idea, and that every piece of information she had sent had been pulled directly by Patricia's assistant, not by her own hand, though she admitted she had known about it and had not stopped it soon enough. The formal hearing took place 3 days later, a small conference room dressed up like something far more serious than it actually was. 2 representatives from Human Resources, Patricia Hale seated at the head of the table and Claire seated across from me, refusing to look away even once. Patricia laid out the case clearly and coldly, citing the fake marriage as a fundamental breach of company trust, using it to justify eliminating my position entirely rather than considering a transfer or a demotion. I watched Claire's hands the entire time, clenched tightly in her lap, and I remember thinking she looked like someone waiting for permission to finally say something true. When it was her turn to speak, Claire did not do what Patricia had clearly expected her to do. Instead of reinforcing the case against me, she told the room the fake marriage had been her idea from the very beginning, a decision made out of desperation after being told directly by someone in leadership that she needed to appear more settled to be taken seriously. She said I had never asked for anything in return, that I had simply agreed to help a coworker who deserved better than what the company had been willing to give her honestly. It was not the full truth, and it was not a complete defense, but it was the first time in 2 years I heard Claire choose honesty over her own self-preservation, even knowing it might cost her everything she had spent those 2 years protecting. The hearing ended with my position eliminated, but not the way Patricia had originally intended. Because Claire had admitted the fake marriage was her idea and had refused to frame me as the sole architect of the deception, Human Resources agreed to remove the fraud allegation from my permanent record and process my departure as a standard restructuring layoff, complete with severance and a neutral reference for future employers. It was not the outcome I had hoped for when I walked into that office building years earlier, but it was far better than the version Patricia had been pushing for from the very beginning. I left the company 2 weeks later, carrying a small box of belongings and a strange, complicated relief that I had not expected to feel. Claire and I did not speak much in the months that followed. There was too much history between us to simply return to being coworkers, and too much distance between us to easily become anything else. I took a position at a smaller company across town, a quieter place with far less politics and far fewer performances required of me. And slowly, I began rebuilding a version of my career that did not depend on pretending to be someone I was not. Almost a year later, Claire reached out to me directly for the first time since I had left. She did not apologize outright, not in the way I might have once expected from her, but she told me something I had not known until that moment. Patricia Hale had been quietly investigated by the company several months after my departure, following complaints from at least 2 other employees who described being pressured into similar arrangements, trading loyalty and personal information for job security during that same restructuring period. Claire's testimony at my hearing, the moment she chose honesty over self-preservation, had apparently been the first crack in a pattern that eventually led to Patricia's own removal from the company entirely. I sat with that information for a long time after Claire told me. It reframed everything I thought I understood about the 2 years we had spent building a lie together. Claire had not been the villain I believed her to be in the weeks after I read that email. She had been someone cornered by a person with far more power than either of us, forced into choices that were never really choices at all, and in the end, she had chosen the harder path when it mattered most, even knowing it might cost her the very career she had sacrificed so much to protect. Loyalty and betrayal are not always opposites, and I learned that lesson more directly than I ever expected to. Sometimes they exist inside the exact same person on 2 different days, shaped by fear, by pressure, by circumstances neither of us had fully chosen for ourselves. I do not know if what Claire and I had, in whatever form it existed, could be called friendship in the traditional sense. But I know that when it mattered most, she told the truth, even when the lie would have been easier, even when the lie would have protected her far more than it protected me. Would you have kept the lie going as long as we did, or would you have let the truth end it sooner, before it ever had the chance to cost either of you anything at all? I still think about that boardroom sometimes, the folder sliding across the table, the freeze-frame moment when I genuinely believed my entire career was about to end because of a lie I had agreed to tell out of loyalty rather than malice. What I want to know from you now is simple. What do you think you would have done in my position, sitting across from someone you had protected for 2 years, watching her decide whether to protect you back or let you go to save herself? Would you have kept the lie going as long as we did, or would you have ended at the moment it started to feel too heavy to carry? If this story affected you the way I hope it did, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me whether you believe Claire made the right choice in that hearing room. Tell me whether loyalty like ours is something you have ever experienced yourself, in a workplace, in a friendship, in a relationship that asked more of you than you originally expected to give. And if this story kept you here until the very end, wait until you hear what happened to a coworker of mine who faked an entire identity for 3 years and very nearly walked away with it completely undiscovered. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. And thank you, genuinely, for staying with me through this one from beginning to end.